Good morning. This is Connor from 500 Edge, where we trade SPX 0DTE options. If you want to join the team, link in the description. In this video, I'm going to recap the previous session and break down what matters today ahead of the opening bell. On Monday, SPX traded lower but closed flat to 74.13. NASDAQ underperformed down 0.3% as rotation out of semis continued, down 2.25%. Now, we did open with a big gap to the upside into a very critical resistance zone, a transitional zone known as our flips. SPX flips 74.65, SPY flips 74.73. Bulls were unable to break and hold above. We did get a bit of a run up here at the open, nearly testing the implied high of 74.85, which was the upper bound of the probable intraday range. And we had a very sharp reversal, filling the downside gap and moving in to this macro upsloping trend line that connects the June low. So 1, 2, and we've tested this about 4 times over the past few trading sessions, but continues to hold. Additionally, yesterday we had a very positive breadth reading, but this was crushed right at the open with growth underperformance. So growth actually led that sell-off at the open. So 2 bearish indications. Additionally here, volatility was rebid. The previous session on Friday, we saw a bid off 17.3, which was the recent breakout. And then we got a bit of a curl up here, a rebid in volatility, surpassing the 19 macro pivot and moving in to 20 with 20.5 a recent peak. And this is just the macro pivot, right? It has been for about 4 or 5 months now, and the market just continues to gravitate towards that strike when vol is elevated. So volatility remains key for market direction, potential for feedback loops in both directions. We want to continue to utilize the VIX in tandem with our SPX levels to look for those confluence points, and VIX levels are unchanged. Another key level to focus on, which has been in play for over a month now, is 74.25. This was resistance, turned support, and has been more of a pivot point over the past 6 sessions, with the SPY ABS at 740, which is, give or take a couple points from that 25 handle. However, bulls have been unable to break and hold above, so we closed below it over the past 3 trading sessions. As you can see, selling pressure dominant above. So this is going to be the first level bulls need to reclaim. 74.25 is also our 0 gamma level today. And then there's been a lot of trend lines in play, macro trend lines here on the higher time frame. Of course, that big one connecting the June low, but there's also a downsloping trend line connecting from about mid-July, the recent swing high here, 1, 2. We nearly tested it yesterday. So we could very well be trading within these 2 trend lines going into FOMC, which is tomorrow, and that's going to be the big catalyst for perhaps the next directional move, breakout back to highs, or breakdown back to lows, and perhaps before lows, that 7,300 SPX put wall. For today, not a lot has changed. The trend remains down with the 20 EMA in green below the 40 EMA in red, and this holds true on both the 1 hour and the 4 hour as well. We are below all transitional levels, so bulls need to reclaim these transitional levels to start to reestablish control. 0 gamma 74.25, SPX flip level 74.55. Now, in the event we do break and hold those levels, bullish indications, with the previous high at 74.80, implied high today 74.87. That is a 1% implied move. And then above that, we have the big 7,500 handle. On the downside, 7,400. It is a key level from a GAM perspective, although price action has not really respected it as a major support. We've traded below it multiple times, although demand has been present below. But this is not surprising because we've had this big macro trend line, so the market, tends to get sucked in to these trend lines. Now, if we do break this trend line, we break this support zone here. So this support zone is quite critical. We got 73.75. This is the previous week's low, so a break implies weekly continuation. You also have the SPY put wall in here at about 73.72. Now, in the event that does break, it opens the door to 73.50 with the implied low today at 73.39. Transitioning over to our dashboard, total gamma exposure for the SPX is negative 255 million notional, although you can see it has been much more neutral than imbalanced over the past 2 weeks. We are, however, below our main transitional level of 74.55. Below, most strikes are negative, that is destabilizing for the market price. Above, most strikes are positive, that is supportive for the market price. 7400 key level, a break, hold, and close below is when we'll start to see some material negative gamma. In regards to the absolute gamma strike, known as the ABS, known as fair value, that is 740 for SPY or SPX 7422 equivalent. Now that differential does change day over day, but over the past 2 weeks, it's been around 7430, 7420, and we've continued to see a reversion around this handle, which is quite typical behavior. Now, fair value for the SPX is 7,500. Not in play. This was, about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It was fair value there for a couple weeks, but we broke below it, shifted value lower, and we're trading in and around that SPY 740 handle. But levels, dynamics, unchanged. The market is waiting for a catalyst for that next directional move. Now, clearly, we had earnings, the start of Mag 7 earnings last week. Not great results, negative response, and we've seen some selling pressure and obviously been trading a little bit lower since then. But we have a number of catalysts here this week. Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Amazon, all set to report. And then tomorrow we have FOMC. Now, rate expectations are for no change, but of course, participants are going to pay attention to Kevin Warsh, his comments on inflation and economic growth. And if you recall his last meeting, which was his first meeting, there was a bit of a hawkish tone. So we have a number of catalysts coming up that could potentially see us break one way or the other and get that move back to all-time highs or back to the SPX put wall at 7,300. So in the event we do see weakness, this would be our downside target and potentially lower bound, although this could very well shift lower. But we'll see how things shake out over the next couple days. As far as today goes, nothing has changed day over day.